So, a very warm good evening, everyone. Myself, Krishna Priya from Foundation for Excellence, and it gives me an immense pleasure to welcome you all to the seventh session of our technical series on Java programming. So, today's session is extra special as we have with us a mentor and a thought leader whose passion for technology and learning has made a remarkable impact on countless professionals and learners over the years. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Panneer Selvam, corporate learning expert at SAP Labs India Private Limited. So, this is the third time he is with us, and each session with him has been nothing short of inspiring. So, what makes Mr. Panneer Selvan's journey stand out is not just his 2 decades of experience in software engineering, but his ability to transform learning into a lifelong pursuit. From designing and architecting cloud native applications to driving global learning initiatives at SAP, he has consistently bridged the gap between technology and people. So, he is a certified Kubernetes application developer, a cloud native enthusiast, and a master trainer, credentials that reflect his technical excellence. But beyond the certifications, his true strength lies in making complex concepts simple, practical, and engaging for the learners. So today, he'll be taking us through the fascinating world of Java, one of the most powerful and enduring programming languages. With his deep expertise and unique approach to learning, we are in for an insightful and enriching session. So let us all extend a very warm virtual welcome to him. Over to you, Mr. Panel.
Yeah, thank you so much, Krishna Priya. That was a very warm welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, hello everyone. Hello, Tarana. Um, yeah,
Hi, Mr. Puneet.
it's
Thank you so much once again for you being
sure
the speaker
a
for the
pleasure.
session. We really look forward to the session. Over to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, so hello everyone. Good evening. I hope all of you are doing great. So today, the next 1 hour, we would uh, we would talk about one particular important framework in Java. So all of you know, I cannot cover the entire Java programming language in 1 hour. It's impossible even for AI. So so you need time to learn Java, and I hope all of you know Java already. So or at least starting with Java programming language. I think I asked this question earlier in the previous session. So all of you have some sort of Java experience, and we have talked about Java program also in the previous sessions, also a little bit. So what I want to take in this 60-minute session is exclusively about one very popular framework in Java. I don't know if anybody knows about any frameworks in Java. Uh, I don't know if you can put that in the chat or in the Q&A section. Does anyone know about any frameworks, well-known frameworks in Java, which is used for application development? Abhinaya, very good. Spring Boot, yes, yes. I think, yeah, I see answers are coming. Yeah, right. So today we are going to look at this framework with some simple examples, right? So we'll not go into, I'll not ask more further questions. So I will explain what Spring is. Probably not everybody is aware of it. And somebody is also from the C++ background. But most importantly, the concept is pretty much available in all programming language. So I want you to understand the concept behind this framework. So which would be useful in any programming language you take, JavaScript, C Sharp, .NET, or any Python, any programming language you take. So this concept is very much fundamental. So let's begin. Yeah. So I will share my screen and show you the. Okay. I hope my screen is visible to you.
Yes, Panisalam, it's visible.
Yeah. Okay, great. Right. So this framework is also called as dependency injection framework, right? So dependency injection using Spring. So if you look at the background image, uh, can you try to correlate what the picture is trying to say and what I have in the text? So dependency injection. So I'm curious to see your thoughts on this. So feel free to type that in the box, Q&A box. I hope that you are able to access it, right? Yeah. So you see what do you see in the background? Cranes, right? There are many cranes available over there. And yeah, I can't able to write message exactly you are writing it. So go ahead and you can write uh, anything that you derive out of this particular picture. Why I am putting this picture for the dependency injection using Spring. There is a reason behind it. Huh? Yeah, Abhinaya, connecting the discrete components through dependency. Okay, every pole is independent. Okay, relevant points you are giving. Very nice. All are dependent on each other. Okay, you are bringing the dependency also here, right? All are dependent on each other. Okay. Any other thoughts? So what is it something to do with the injection? So anybody uh, to arrange something? Okay, yes, that's the use of the entire crane, right? Yeah, chat is disabled, but go ahead and put it in the Q&A only. So I can still read all of your, yeah. I don't know if anybody can unmute there and maybe we can, I don't know, there are a few raised hands.
Yeah, students, if you have questions, you want to respond, raise your hands and we will unmute you.
Yeah, so probably we can hear from one or two of you.
Yes. Because you've raised your hand. KP, can you just put him as a panelist?
Yes, that one.
Okay, allowed to talk. Vikas, you can speak now.
Vikas, are you there? I hope you can speak now.
Probably by mistake he pressed the.
Yeah, could be.
Yeah. Okay. So let's keep it simple. Yeah. So I'll go ahead. Yes. So the word injection is what primarily I try to explain with this picture. So this concept of dependency injection is very much relevant in the application development world when a lot of interdependency, you rightly mentioned about a lot of components working together, they have tight coupling, tight dependency, right? But how do we manage all these dependencies in application development in programming languages like Java? So the framework Spring allows us to inject the dependency. How exactly? So if you look at the crane, does the crane operate on its own? Does the crane operates on its own? No, answer is no, right? Crane as a component, the machine, it cannot operate on its own. So there needs to be an operator, right? Most probably you will see a human sitting inside and operating the crane. Yeah. You all have seen the high-rise buildings that we are seeing in all the cities. Construction is going on everywhere. There are cranes and some operators are sitting inside and they are operating. Now, who is depending on who in this case? The crane is depending on the operator. Can I say it like that? The crane is depending on the operator. So the operator is the one who is actually making sure that the component, the crane is working fine. So in this case, the crane is depending on the operator for the function, whatever uh, the purpose of having the crane over there. Yeah, so making arranging things. So in this case, there are two parties involved: operator, the human operator, and the crane machine. So here there is a dependency between these two. But then tomorrow you can say that now everything also we have automated and we have machines coming in, robots coming in. The human could be replaced with the robots, right? Kind of a automated pilot as a machine sitting inside. Now, still the crane needs someone to operate, but then the dependency here is not with the human, but someone else. Yeah, something else. So the dependency, who is responsible for deciding the. Now, the next question is, think about it. Who is responsible for deciding, okay, this crane should be operated by a human or this crane should be operated by the machine or maybe a robot? Yeah, who is deciding that? Is it the crane deciding it? Okay, I want a human to be operated by this one. Yeah, or I want this crane to be operated by a robot. Is the crane deciding that? Most often not. It's not the crane. The crane can be operated by either a human or by a robot. So both anyone can operate. So in this case, the point to understand here is that dependency is injected, yeah, by someone like the construction company is injecting the dependency, the human or robot into the crane. So this is how we should understand this framework. The dependency is injected from outside so that the crane itself does not have to depend on any specific operator. Okay, so I hope you're getting this concept very clearly, so that there is a dependency injection happening into the crane component. Yeah, one component is getting a dependency from outside, someone is injecting it. Yeah, so that's the whole point of injection. Yeah, yes, correct. So this is what we are going to now look at it in detail, how exactly it is done in Java program. So we talked about with this picture, background picture. So just to understand in our mental picture, so you have a component A, which is this crane, and component B, which is the operator. Now, this operator B, the component B, can be replaced with one another, like the human or the robot. Okay, so maybe think about any sort of example. One is depending on the other, but there are many possible replacements, alternatives are available. So in such cases, the best would be to inject the dependency from outside, not inside, not within the component itself. Yeah. So that is the component of that is the concept of dependency injection. I hope that that point is clear with this picture here. Now let's take a look into how it is done in Java world. Since the session is all about Java, so we take the Java example, but you will find, so if someone is from C++, you will find a similar example from the C++ world as well. So why Spring framework? And Spring is an open source framework. So here, just pausing a while just to see if you are aware of what is open source framework. Have you heard about open source framework? Any answers here? What is an open source framework? Do you know? Have you heard about open source, or are you contributing to open source? Okay, Node.js, Prerna says Node.js. Okay, that's an example of open source uh, programming language, but what is an open source?
Mr. Pani, we have few answers in the chat box.
Oh, chat is
Yeah.
enabled now? Oh,
Yes, yes,
great.
it's
All right, then I think that's good. Okay, now it's better. Yeah, free to use. I was looking at the Q&A box. Now I'll use the chat box. Everybody feel free to put it in the chat. Yeah, I see a lot of comments available free and we can contribute to it. Yes, open to all. Yeah, open source. Yes, it's a community driven. It is not by a specific company. Like the software companies, they create software and then they sell it to customers, and then the users will have to buy the license and pay to the company. But whereas if you say open source, it's a community driven, and there are a lot of foundations like Linux Foundation, Cloud Native Computing Foundations. These foundations manage the open source community, and then if you are interested in contributing to some open source components, you can go ahead and be a contributor, and then you can learn from the contribution. Yeah, so Spring is such an open source framework, and it's a community developed framework. Yeah, similarly you will find lot of open source projects. Okay, so it simplifies the Java development. I think someone mentioned in my when I asked about the frameworks in Java, I think someone mentioned about servlets, right? So without the Spring framework, the Spring framework was created probably some 10-15 years ago. Uh, but Java language is there for many years, right? And before Spring framework, Java development using the servlets, you create an application and you have to write a lot of boilerplate code. See, what is boilerplate code? What is your understanding of boilerplate code? Anybody heard about this boilerplate? So you have to understand what every sentence here says, because dry run code, is it predefined, pre-written syntax, skeleton code? Yeah, I'll think skeleton code, defined structure, base code. Every program need. Yeah, that's a good answer. So all of the answers are kind of in the right direction, and the uh, base code every program need. Tina, I think that's probably more closer. Uh, like a template, reusable code. Yeah, non-business code you must write. Yeah, non-business code. I like that answer, Nisha. Um, Predefined code. So correct, structured code. Right. So boilerplate code is something that you need for your application to run, but that's nothing to do with your business logic. So every application has a business logic. So you take a programming language Java and you write your application, and the purpose of the application is captured in your business logic, and that business logic is the main code that you're writing. But then you also have to write additional code just to make sure that your application is able to run. Like if you have to run an application, a web application, you need to put it in a web server, and to deploy it in a web server, you need to have the setup, right? The basic setup of starting the web server and registering the controller, and then making sure that the call is received, and making sure that the call is delegated to the actual business logic. So all these things that I'm talking about, they are not only about the business logic, they are also technical, uh, to make sure that the application is able to run. But it's important, it's not at all, I'm not saying they are not important, but it's important. But then as an application developer of Java, do you have to write it all the time? Probably not. So you can focus mainly on your business logic. So whatever is your customer problem, you can focus on the customer issue. So that is the business logic. But then boilerplate code should be eliminated now. With the Spring framework, it tries to do the boilerplate code on its own, and so that the application developers are free to focus on the business logic. It enables declarative programming. So declaratively, you can write your code using Spring framework with the help of annotations. So you can declare something as a, let's say, I'll come to the sample code later. You can declare some Java class as a component, as a Java bean. So these are some of the technical terminologies, but you can declaratively code your application. So it enables that as well. Finally, the most important aspect is the loosely coupling through dependency injection. So I'm mentioning three most important benefits of using Spring framework in Java. Number one, eliminating boilerplate code, enable declarative programming, loose coupling through dependency injection. So what do we understand with the word loose coupling? Anybody, any thoughts on the word loose coupling? Loose coupling through dependency injection. Less dependency, Kaushik, correct? Less dependency, not permanent, not well defined. Okay, it can be coupled properly. Dependency not tightly bound. Yeah, actually, not tightly bound, correct? One module doesn't depend on the other. Yes, that's also in the right direction. Yeah, so basically you are getting the point. So when you have two components, they are loosely coupled with each other. That means one can be replaced with the other. So it's not tightly coupled. If you separate them out, also the other one can function. If it is a tight coupling, without the one, the other cannot function. It's like that. You can like that kind of a dependency. So when we saw the example of crane, I don't know if anybody related to the crane example that we saw. So there are two components, crane and the operator. They are loosely coupled to each other, so that they one can be replaced. So of course, tomorrow if there is another machine replacing crane, yeah, you can use that with the same operator. Human can use that to do the job. Or if the crane can be run by another robot, it can replace the um, human. So these two are loosely coupled with each other. And then how do they work with each other? Yeah, with the help of dependency injection. So you inject the dependency into the other. Yeah, don't declare it very tightly with each other, but loosely define it and inject the dependency through the dependency injection framework. So basically, Spring does these three things for us. So which makes it very popular. So if you Java is still widely used programming language, in addition to along with the Node.js and other web application software available. And in Java, so Spring is the most popular, and almost 90% of the applications in Java created using Spring framework. And it's very powerful in that way. Okay, so moving ahead, and how let's look at little bit of into the Spring container here. Spring IOC container, we have application context which manages your beans. So here there are two contexts. One is two terms here. You see application context and then beans. So the main component inside Spring library is the application context. So the application context for a given application, it knows all the components of your application. So let's say in the construction example, so the application context will know about the operator and the crane. So there are two beans. So in the technical terminology, so we call that as bean. Yeah. So in the crane example, operator and crane, there are two beans. So what is a bean then? Objects managed by Spring. So if you say that your application is developed using Spring framework, then you start to create beans. So you make the objects, everything as a bean. So crane is one bean, operator is another bean. Yeah, they are Spring beans because the objects are managed by Spring application context. And then Spring manages the life cycles. So the Spring framework takes care of instantiating, configuring, assembling. The whole thing is taken care by the Spring. Meaning, if you have an operator, the crane and the operator, there are two Java classes. Let's now imagine in the context in the world of Java, right? You can think of crane is one Java class and operator is another Java class. You can have properties, you can have methods, all the code inside the operator and all the code inside the crane. And now you have to instantiate. Who is going to do that? Is it someone else, like another class going to do that? In case of Spring, the application context itself does the instantiation. Yeah, the first step is instantiation, and then the second step is configure. Okay, now what is configuration? We have instantiated two objects, crane and operator. It could be many more, right? So I'm giving a very simple example, but in real world there will be many such components. So you think about, there are 100 components available in real world. All of these are instantiated and all of these are configured. So who should be using what? So configuration and what settings you have to give for each application, each component. So that configuration is done by Spring. And then assembling all of them together to perform a task, right? So final step is assembling. So these two components should work together. So you assemble them together. After configuring them independently, you assemble them. So instantiation, configuration, and then assembly. So these are the three lifecycle tasks Spring takes care of for us in the application. Yeah. Okay, so that's about the Spring IOC container. Just pausing for a minute. If you have any questions, I don't know if there are questions in the Q&A box.
Uh, should we take up the questions now, Mr. Panneer?
If there are questions related to these topics, I don't want to keep them till the end, but if there are questions so far.
All right, all right. So mostly the questions we have is about the guidance and roadmap for Java program. So
Mhm.
should we take it in the last?
That we can
Okay,
take it
all right.
lots, only related to the concept that we are discussing. If there are questions, we can bring
Oh,
it up.
not as of now,
Not
Panis.
awesome. Okay. Then I hope all of you are understanding what I'm saying with respect to Spring and the example with the crane and operator, so that you're able to relate what we are trying to talk, and these three important points that I mentioned here. Okay. Now, giving you Java code, yeah, without showing any code, you might not appreciate, right, what I'm saying. So I will, maybe you have done some Java coding and you're familiar, and some of you from C++ background, you can still understand this code. So that's the beauty of learning one language, and you're able to map it to the other language, right? So they are all object-oriented programming languages. So here we have a class called application configuration, app config, and we have annotation called configuration. So this is the configuration that we are talking about in the previous point that I said about configuration, right? Instantiation, configuration. Now, instantiation and configuration. So here we are seeing two things. One is the instantiation. So here you see inside this code, there is a method public my service, and return new my service simple. So here the actual Java class is the my service impl. I think this is easy, right? So you are creating a new object with the help of new keyword. Yeah. So this is how in Java you create an object. Now, this is you are defining inside this configuration class, which means you are telling the Spring application context that there is a bean, there is a component with the name my service, and the object instantiation has to be done in this way by calling new my service simple. So you are telling the application context. Of course, the application context doesn't know on its own. As an application developer, you have to first inform the application context in Spring that, okay, this is the class name, this is how you create the object instantiation. So you basically train your model. So I think all of you know about AI, and how does AI answer your question, right? So you have to first train. Only when you train with the good data, then later when you query the chatbot, it's able to answer, right? Same way, you have to tell the Spring application context. um, this is the bean name, and this is how you create an object instance. If I connect with our crane example, so you basically tell public my crane, yeah, that's the name of the bean, and my crane and crane implementation. Yeah, so you can replace this my service with my crane, and that's how you instantiate a component. Okay, and you basically configure that in this configuration class. Hope that's clear. And the last, the bottom one here, it says how that Java class of my service impl would look like. So what is this my service here? It's implementing interface. Okay, I think this is uh, you know that, right? In Java you can implement an interface, extend a base class. So here we are implementing an interface called my service, and it's a class name is my service impl. So that's the definition. But the most important thing is the at component. So you are declaring that as a component. Okay, so simple example of declaring one component and instructing or configuring the application context of Spring. How do we instantiate that particular component?
So, Mr. Panneer Selvam, Shruti has a question.
Yeah.
Yeah, Shruti, you can unmute and ask now. All right. Uh, yeah, Shruti, please go on. Sorry, Shruti, you're not audible. If possible,
Voice breaking.
yeah, your voice is breaking.
Now am I audible?
Yeah, it's a little more clear. Yes, yes.
I want to ask exactly what is meant by the Spring Boot library.
Spring Boot library, right?
Yes.
Okay. Spring Boot library, I mean, there is no such thing as Spring Boot library because Spring Boot is a framework. So when the library is what you have inside the framework, yeah. So the framework is the overarching term we use. Okay, Spring Boot, they are frameworks, and then the library is nothing but set of Java classes, right? So for example, it has inside the framework, it has several libraries. For example, to use a web application, to create a web application, it has Spring Web MVC library. To use the database related functionalities, it has a Spring Data JPA. For security related concepts, it has Spring Security Library. So these libraries are nothing but a set of Java classes that you can use in your application. If you want a web application development, then you use the library of Spring Web Library, yeah, from the framework. So the framework consists of so many libraries which you can make use when you develop your application.
Again, I want to ask sir one question.
Yeah.
Means for what purpose we can use a Spring Boot framework?
Yeah, the purpose of using Spring Boot framework is to make your application development much more easier. If you don't use the framework, you can still develop Java applications, but like I said, the development task is very difficult because you will have to write a lot of boilerplate code. You will have to write everything by writing code. A lot of lines of code needs to be written, and the dependency would be tightly coupled if you don't use the Spring Boot framework. So the purpose of Spring Boot framework is to make sure that the application development is much more smoother and much more simpler than not using the Spring framework. Yeah.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you for asking.
Thank you, Shruti. Mr. Pani, we have few questions regarding the topic.
Yeah.
Can I?
Yeah. Go ahead,
Oh,
please.
God. All right. Okay. Can you bit elaborate on beans?
Yeah, sure, definitely. The bean, I think the name comes from the coffee bean, right? So, in when the concept of bean is not introduced with the Spring. It's not something coming with the Spring frameworks. It's Spring framework simply leverages the existing terminology of bean. So, the term bean used to refer is Java classes only, Java objects only, but they are meant for special purpose. Yeah. So you can have Java class and you can have any number of Java classes and you can create objects. Will you call all the objects as bean? No, we will call a special purpose Java classes as bean. So what kind of special purpose Java classes? For example, you have a data model and in your application, let's say I relate a student in your you have a college and you have a library and you have books and you as a student you go to the library and get a book and all. So here if you know about database and you know about the data model, so here there are many entities like you have a student, you have library, you have book. So these entities you configure them as beans. Yeah, the meaning you have certain properties associated with the object, like student has ID, name, address, and so on, the courses and so on. So the bean is simply a placeholder of properties and a easy way of retrieving the data and setting the data. So you would in a if you say something as a bean, so in the bean you will have only the properties and the getter and setter methods. You will not have a functionality or a business logic or a behavior to it. In typically in a Java class, you can have behavior like a method, right? Doing some operations. You can write inside a Java class. But when it comes to bean, you will only have properties and you will only have getters and setters on the bean. So such kind of Java objects, we generally call them as beans.
I hope, Advait, that answers your question. We have one more question from Nisha. That is, what is dependency injection and why is it useful?
What dependency injection? What is dependency injection? I talked about it. So you don't have tightly coupled setup. Like with the example of operator and the crane does not depend on any single operator. So inside the crane class, you don't instantiate a human operator, right? If you instantiate a human operator, then it's a tight coupling. That crane can work only with a human operator. But we don't want to have application like that. We want to be more flexible, right? So then it has to be loosely coupled. And how do we achieve loosely coupled? Through dependency injection. The operator is injected from outside. Yeah, it's something not decided by the crane itself. So that is called dependency injection.
And we have one more question from Ashish. Is Spring also used in robotics?
Uh, the robotics, it was a broad terminology, so you're talking about. So we need to boil down to so what exactly we are talking inside robotics. Is it an application development that are we talking about the software side or the hardware side? So if you talk about the software that runs the machines, and there are many choices, right? So Java is one programming language. You could use Python is another programming language. So it depends on the use case and the context which programming language is used. And if Java is used, I'm very much sure that Spring will have its own place.
So, Mr. Pandey, should I take one more question or?
Yeah.
Oh,
If it is
okay.
specific to so far whatever we discussed, yes.
Fine. So, what is the difference between instantiation and configuration?
Yeah, so instantiation, very good. So the instantiation is what I showed with this example here. So if you look at the new my service impl, so this is called instantiation. Yeah, instantiation. Now, what is configuration? So the configuration for Spring is this whole class is a configuration class. So in this configuration class, you would be telling what classes will have to be instantiated. So, and also what are the parameters you need to pass. This example that I have, you don't have any parameters passed into this instantiation, but you could have a configuration where you say that, okay, this is a bean instantiation and I want to configure my bean in so and so way. So all that you will define in this particular configuration. So that is the configuration part. And then I talked about assembly. That means one bean depending on other bean and the dependency injection. So that is called assembly. So injecting one into another one so that you are able to assemble all the components together so that it can work together.
And we have one last question, that is, to learn Spring Boot, is it necessary to learn Maven or Gradle first?
You can learn both. So you can use both build tools. So Maven or Gradle, they both are kind of build tools for Java, and you can use both. Yeah, no restriction on that. Whatever you feel comfortable, you can use it. Maven is also used very commonly, and Gradle. So I have no preference. But if you ask me which one I am using very commonly, I use Maven most often.
So we have more questions coming up. Should I take it?
Probably in the interest of time, I'll probably take few more slides
Sure.
and then we will look at the
Sure.
questions. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Sure. Thanks so much for the questions. Yeah, it's nice to have more interaction. Yeah, great. So let me proceed. There is one more topic I want to cover with this. So we talked about dependency injection, and we said that it has to be injected from outside. So then you might ask the question, okay, how exactly we will inject it? Yeah. So that's naturally the next question as a developer you should ask. How do we do that? Okay, you talked about a crane and you talked about operator, and you say that I inject operator into crane, but tell me how. Yeah, so that's the concept of the next three slides I will show you. There are three ways of doing it: field injection, setter injection, constructor injection. From the name itself, you can derive what it could mean. What's the meaning of field injection? What's the meaning of setter injection and constructor injection? In a Java class, you have all of these three things. I'll go with the bottom. Yeah, that's the most simplest thing. Constructor. Every Java class will have a constructor, or at least a default constructor. Yeah. So the constructor is used to initialize the Java object. Correct. So you have in a Java object, you have set of properties and you want to initialize those properties with some values. You use the constructor for it. and you have setter injections. What is setter? So I talked about setter and getter when I talked about beans. So when I say Java bean, it's an object which has properties, or you can say fields, and these properties will have setters and getters. So the setter is another method in Java class. Let's say set operator. So let's call that as a set operator as a method name. So that is a setter method. And then field injection. So the field injection, also known as property, and in other terms, general term is called property, but in Java specifically, we call it as a field. So in a Java class, you have a member variable declared on the top, right, the global level. So that is called a field. And even in the field also, you can inject. Yeah. So to again connect with the crane class, let's imagine there is a class called crane, and inside the crane class there is a field called operator, and in that field you can inject the uh, operator, or you can have set operator setter method and you can inject, or you can have a constructor in the crane class and you can pass the operator to the constructor. So these are the three injection techniques. I will show you with the help of some examples. Yeah, very generic one. Okay, so to understand this concept, a generic one. So the my service impl is the name of the class. It implements this my service. Okay, very simple component. And now there is a consumer who is going to consume that particular component. And here the declaration, the variable declaration, private my service, and then the name of the variable my service. You are declaring without specifying the name of the class. So that is the trick here. We are not using the class name. Nowhere we are using the class name in this code. Can you see it? Have we used the Java class name myServiceImpl anywhere in this code? No, we have not used it. Instead, we only use the myService interface name. Yeah, myService is an interface. We are only using the interface name. And how do we then create the instance of myServiceImpl? In a traditional way, you would be thinking, okay, let me put a declaration private myServiceImpl and myServiceImpl. You will create a variable out of the class name, and then you will put equal to new myServiceImpl. Right? So that is how you would think to create an object. But in case of Spring Framework, in case of application uh, dependencies injection, so you would not do that instantiation directly. That will lead you to tight coupling. Yeah, one class depending on other class very tightly. But that is not often preferred. Sometimes, yes, you might want to do a tight coupling, then you can go ahead and do that, because if that particular class is going to be used from this class only, nobody else is going to use it, and this is the only choice I have, then you will declare it inside directly. But if you have multiple choices and you want to switch between the multiple choices, then you say you put my service. To give an example, right? Do you use the food service, food delivery platforms like Swiggy or Zomato? Yeah, I'm sure you use, right? And you are the consumer of the food delivery service, right? And think about it. If you declare your variable private Swiggy service, are you tightly coupled with one vendor? Yeah, think about it. As a consumer, do you want to tightly coupled with one vendor? Maybe yes, maybe there are some loyalty programs, so you want to stick to one vendors, but sometimes you want to have the flexibility. Okay, let me see what offer I have in Zomato. Yeah. So I want to order some food and let me see if there are coupons, if there are offers. So you see that, right? So if you want to have a different delivery platform, then you need to have a loose coupling. As a consumer, you have to have a loose coupling with the food service. So take an example of anything, right? You have the grocery delivery at home. You have a lot of right, and taxi service. You have Uber, Ola, Rapido. So kind of. So as a consumer, you have choices, and so your application, the same way, application components have many choices of different other application components. So you have to have a flexibility in your application design. So here, instead of depending on my service impl, you depend on my service, which is an implementing a contract. Yeah, this is the beauty of Java interface. It says the contract. See, all the food delivery service like Swiggy, Zomato, they have a contract, so they have a certain way of functioning, and that they probably use the similar techniques right behind the scenes, and you just order and the food comes to you within 30 minutes. So that is the contract, and that contract is implemented by both delivery platform, and so you depend on the interface. As a consumer, you depend on the interface, and then the actual implementation comes to you through the constructor. Yeah, the my service constructor injection is happening here. Now the same way, if I proceed to the next example. Okay, I don't have the next example right now, but you can imagine you can have a set method, public set my service, and you get the argument parameter in a setter method. So you could have a constructor injection, or you could have a setter injection, or you could have a field injection. The third type is field injection, whereas you can directly inject it in the field itself. You don't have to have this constructor, or you don't have to have a setter. So all of these are possible, but the most common way of injecting is constructor through constructor injection. This is why I have this example in this slide. Pausing here for a minute to see if there are questions. Are there questions in the chat?
Yes, we have few questions.
You can
Should I
take one or
take
two.
the questions?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
Sir, if I want to learn about this, can you give me a source to learn? Is there any
Yeah.
I
To learn Spring Boot, there are plenty of resources out there. If you simply search in Google or ChatGPT, you will get plenty of resources. There is no single resource that I would have. So plenty of resources. Yes, you can use. There is a Spring documentation itself available. Java Spring Framework documentation. So if you simply search for Spring Framework, most likely you will get the yeah, so you will get the Spring documentation, spring.io. So this is the homepage for the Spring framework if you want to learn more. So this is probably the number one site you should look for. But then there are also different other mediums available. So many different websites available to give you a proper tutorial kind of for a scenario. So here you will learn everything about Spring. But then if you want to have a specific examples, then you will also find a lot of resources. Yeah.
I hope that answers your question. So we have one question from Manvid. So basically, sir, as you told, being related to Getter and Better. So can we say model files in Spring Boot projects where we object features written so is model is equal to bean?
Yeah, exactly. So you can relate that way. So the model, all the model classes are called beans. We will also sometimes call them as entities. Yeah. So these are all some of the terms we use when developing application. But to keep it simple, you can call them as bean. Yes.
So I think Badal has raised his hand. Badal, if you want to talk, yeah, you're allowed. You can speak. Badal, are you there? Like, if you have any more questions related to this, all right, no worries. We can move to the next one. So Hima has asked the question like how Spring will help to build websites.
Yeah. See, Spring, when you talk about websites, there are two things involved, right? One is the front end, the screen aspects of it, the user interface, user experience. So that is mostly done with the JavaScript and the HTML and so on, right? That's a front end user interface technology. Angular JS and all these front end UI technologies are heavily used in all the websites. Spring doesn't have a role to play in the UI side. Okay, so where does Spring come into picture? So the Spring framework mainly on the backend side, on the business logic side. You create the HTTP REST or APIs on the backend side. So that is where the Spring framework comes into picture. Yeah, website consists of the user interface and the backend logic. So Spring framework comes into the backend logic side.
We have a question asking like, what are the resources to learn Java as a beginner?
Resources to learn Java as a beginner. Again, the Java documentation. There are plenty of resources out there. So the official Java documentation from the, for example, the OpenJDK or Oracle JDK. So there are resources available. There are also other tutorials available for Java. So you can refer freely any of them. So they are all equally good. Yeah.
Yeah, hi, Badal. Like, are you asking any question? Sorry, we're not able to hear you clearly. All right, okay.
Yeah.
So, okay, we
Yeah.
have one question from Abhinaya. So, does it mean instantiating using interface is preferred over class?
Good question, Vinaya. It's the right question. So because you saw that I used interface, but not the class name, but that doesn't mean you can. That doesn't mean we are instantiating with the help of interface. Instantiating the interface. No, you are not instantiating the interface there. In this case, we are not seeing an example of new my service, right? So we are not putting that new my service. The new keyword in Java is used to create object instantiation, right? Always you put class name right after the new, but you don't see it anywhere here because that has gone into your application context. Here you have told the Spring framework, okay, whenever I need a my service implementation, instantiate it like this, my service impl. Okay, so here we are using the class name, but the instantiation happens with the class name, but you assign that object into an interface variable. So that is very much allowed in Java. So that is what we are doing. Hope that answers, Abhinaya.
So, we have one question from Nisha. How does Spring know which beans to create?
Yeah, so that basically we have to configure it here. So this is the configuration part. So when you ask my service, then you hear my service impl. So here, so you have to there are possibility to change it. So which bean is the default bean you can configure, or you can also put conditionally. You can put different beans here. So I have only one example here. But if you have my service 2 impl, my service 3, my service 4, so if you have multiple implementations, so you can configure them based on which scenario, which implementations will have to be picked up. So it can be decided.
And we have one question from Abhinaya. Here, my service is a method and that returns to my service impl, which is of type my service.
Yeah, exactly. Your understanding is correct. Yeah, I think that's your follow-up, right? So yes, yes, my service impl is what going to be created, and it is going to be assigned to the my service interface type. Yeah.
Abhinay, hope that answers your question. Mayuri has asked what work it to differently than UI or UX and full stack development. What work it do differently than UI and UX?
Uh, don't fully get it. Full stack development. Okay, so if you compare the UI UX and full stack development, UI UX is primarily the user interface, the front end side development. But when you call it full stack development, it includes backend application, database, the end to end application development from the UI to the end. So that is what we call as a full stack development. So then you have to learn multiple technologies here, not only the UI technology, but the backend technology, the database technology. As a full stack developer, you will have to learn a lot of things, but then you will also do end to end, right? But the UI UX, you are specialized into UX. There is always a demand for a specific specialization. Yeah, it's not that always you have to be a full stack developer. No, if you are interested in very much designing the UI, UI and you are good at user experience, then you can also specialize into it. There is also companies, there are companies hiring the UI specific experts as well. And also on the other hand, they also hire full stack developers. Then you have to have experience in all the knowledge in all the stacks.
So, Mr. Pani, should I take up the questions?
I think I have probably complete the presentation
All
with
right.
one more. I think I have. Yeah. So this is the last slide of completing the picture. I have the application context, right? I talked about the application context so far. Now, Spring Boot application. So this is how you create the application context. Yeah, you have a configuration already, and you have the bean definition. So you have all your code. Injection is done. Now, finally complete the picture with the help of the application context. Say public class application. So this application could be anything, and you define this with the Spring Boot application annotation at the top. And then this public static void main, any Java application, if you want to run it, you need to have this public static void main, and exactly this application context has this public static void main. So this is the only class in your application should have the main method. This is the only class. You should not have main method anywhere in other classes. You should only have it in your one class, which is defined with Spring Boot application. So then when you start the application, this is the first class to be loaded. Application context is loaded. And then this application context will look for the configurations. Is there a class with the configuration annotation? So that we have right before. Yeah, here. So we have a class called configuration. So your application class will load the configuration as a second step, right? Once the configuration is loaded, all the beans are loaded, right? So whatever beans you have defined over there, all the beans are loaded. Then your application is running. Yeah. Then whenever the user interface, whenever someone makes a request, then the request comes to the backend, and then Spring Framework receives the request, and then it looks at, okay, should it go to component A or component B or component C? All of them are available with the application context. Simply the call is directed. Yeah. So this is how the Spring Boot instantiate the application context and runs the application. In this picture, you also see how to write test cases. Yeah, you have a Spring Boot test. So we talked about unit tests in one of the previous sessions, and you see here there is a class test, and it has the auto wired annotation. So this is called field injection. Yeah, so you have the my service, and you simply define it with auto wired. So then the Spring Boot framework will automatically create the my service implementation and assign it to this variable. So this is called field injection. Yeah. So I talked about 3 injection types. The number one is field injection. The example of that is this code here. So this is @auto wired. So meaning you are telling Spring Boot to automatically instantiate my service impl and assign it to this variable. And if the following test is actually checking if the my service is not null. Yeah. What is null? If something is undefined, is called null. So in this case, we are testing is not null. That means it should be defined. The defined, how is it defined? Because there is a auto wired annotation. So that will be doing the field injection. Okay, so you have both. You have seen field injection, you have seen constructor injection. Setter injection is nothing but having a setter method and then assigning the variable with the value what you're receiving in the setter method. Okay, so that concludes my presentation. We can take more questions related to whatever we discussed so far. I will just quickly go through what we have discussed. We started with the concept of crane operator dependency injection. Then we looked at what is Spring Framework, what is the advantages of it, and how does it help exactly the Java development. Then we looked at the internals of Spring. There is an application context which manages all the beans, which does the instantiation, configuration, and assembly. And then we saw some code example. How do we define the beans with the configuration class, with the bean annotation, with the component annotation, you define this way. 3 ways of injection: field injection, setter injection, constructor injection. We looked at the constructor injection here. Then we looked at the application context creation with a public static void main, which will run your application. And then how do we test the Spring Boot, and how do we do the field injection in this case? Yeah. So that's primarily the presentation about Spring. I hope this gives you a good introduction to Spring. But then Spring is again a huge, vast area. So like you saw in this particular page here, Spring Framework, you see so much of concepts in Spring. Spring Data, Spring Cloud, Spring Framework, Spring Boot. So go ahead and explore more to sharpen your knowledge in this area. Yeah. Krishna, you can look at
Yeah,
the
sure. I'll
questions.
take a few more questions. Okay.
Yeah.
So we have few general questions regarding Java program.
Mhm.
So my primary DSA language is C++. So can I use it on C++?
C++, no, this framework cannot be used. You need to use the C sharp or whatever framework inside C sharp or C++ available. Yeah, so you have to use that framework. But the concept of dependent injection is across the programming language, across all the object-oriented programming. This concept is available. So you better understand the concept now and apply it in different programming languages.
So we have a question from Pavitra. So she's requesting for a roadmap to become a full stack developer. So hello sir, I'm an aspiring Java full stack developer with intermediate knowledge in Java. Could you please provide me with a roadmap to become a full stack developer?
Yeah. So if you want to be a full stack developer, you have to have, like I said, the 3 different components or 3 different layers in an application, starting with the user interface and then the backend and then the database. So Java plays a role in the the middle layer, which is the backend layer, right? So right now you're learning Java intermediate level, so very good. So you learn Java, learn Spring Framework. So this will complete your backend developer role. But now then the database development. So come to the database. There are plenty of databases out there. Like Microsoft has its own database. Oracle has database. SAP has database. So there are database. So learn SQL, the database independent concepts, SQL structured query language. So learn that so that you can work with any databases. So that is the database. And then comes the UI layer, user interface layer. Then you need to learn the JavaScript, the UI concepts, Angular JS. There are a lot of JS technologies available there. So learn all of these. Don't try to do at the same time. So try to learn one by one. Complete good. Have a good understanding of one layer, then go to the next layer. Yeah.
So Pavitra, I hope that answers your question. We have one more question from her. Like, what is the use of interfaces and abstract classes in Java?
Okay, so that's a basic question in Java. Why do we use interfaces and abstract classes to define something as a? There are multiple use cases if you have something as a reuse entity, so you could also put them in a base class, and then it can be inherited by many subclasses. So reusability is one aspect of abstract class. It's not only about reusability but also about defining the contracts. Okay, so the interface is primarily to define the contracts. Yeah. uh, so if your application is performing something, what it is doing, yeah, how it is being done is done in your class, but what is being done is defined in the interface. That's the contract. And then what is the input parameter, what is the output parameter, what is expected, and what is the result. So all that is defined in the interface, right? Then your implementation will fulfill the contract, will implement it in detail. So that is the class. Now talk about abstract class. So you don't have the full implementation, you have partial implementation, and this partial implementation would like to be used across many different variants. Yeah. Then you define something as abstract class, have a partial implementation, and then the remaining detailed specific implementation can come in subclasses. So that is the inheritance structure.
Pavitra, I hope that answers your question. And how do we can use the Spring session to our career study?
Yeah, so now since you are investing time in Java, now invest also time in Spring. Yeah. So Spring Boot learned that, and that's how the application development, real application development happens in the companies. So not only Java, but also learn this framework that will help you uh, to have a career in Java development. Yeah.
So we have question from Nisha. How does Spring inject dependencies into test classes automatically?
Yeah, very good question. So I think you might have also observed in the slide. So I'll go back to the slide. So if you noticed it, you have something called Spring Boot test. So with this Spring Boot test annotation, then the Spring Boot understands, okay, I have to initialize the Spring application context. So it also loads the application context. And then when you ask for when you say auto wired my service, the test case can also refer the application context with all the beans available, with all the configuration available, then it is able to inject the dependency. So the test class can also inject dependency with the help of Spring Boot test annotation. Without that, it cannot. So you need to put the right annotation.
So we have one question from Sonali asking, from first year I have learned C++ language and I have to start the DSA. But I'm confused to which language I should use for DSA, C++ or Java.
Um, which language? DSC meaning you talked about
DSA, yeah,
DSA.
yeah. I
Data structure algorithm, do you mean that? Yeah, if that's what you mean, data structure and algorithm. So you can implement it in either of the languages, C++ or Java. So it's up to you which language you feel, if you have learned both. Yeah. So if you have learned only one language, probably you can continue with that language. But if you learn both, so you can choose whichever you feel more comfortable with. Yeah. So that's what I would say. What gives you more confidence, you go with that. So they are both equally good. Yeah.
yeah, and again we have a question regarding the resources. I hope Mr. Pani we have answered it.
Yeah. Resources. I think I don't have any specific single one, so you can refer any resources out there. The official recommendations would be from the Java documentation, the Spring documentation, but only for don't focus only on that particular platform. So look, different platform. They will give a lot of different perspectives. So don't stick to one single platform or resource for learning. So look for wider platforms. You can go to YouTube and watch videos, and then you can read books, and you can go to ChatGPT, ask questions. So what are questions you are asking me? You can also ask ChatGPT now. So you get more answers, the more variety of answers. So learn from different sources. So that will give a better picture about the technology.
And we have one last question from Nisha. Like, what are the purpose of Spring Boot application annotation?
Annotation. Okay. Very good question. Thanks for asking that. Okay. Annotation. If you have not heard about annotation, okay, uh, like in Java, the annotations are written with the help of the at the rate symbol, and that's how uh, you declare something, an additional metadata. So when you the definition of annotation is that it's adding some value to your class, it's adding some metadata to your class, I can say it like that. So adding some more value, and it enhances your Java class with some properties. So this through annotation here, this simple annotation at test make it runnable as a test case. Yeah. Auto wired as an annotation, there is a definition, there is an implementation behind these annotations that does the job. But you are putting it in one single word at a wired, you are putting that annotation, but behind that annotation there are a lot of things happening. So it's basically, annotation is nothing but adding some metadata to your class.
So I hope that answers all of our questions. So this comes to the end of the session. Thank you so much, Mr. Panneer Selvam, for guiding us through today's enriching session on Java. I'm sure your practical approach, clarity, and wealth of experience have definitely supported our scholars to understand more about Java, not just as a programming language, but I'm sure it has laid a foundation for our scholars to build efficient and innovative solutions in future. So we are especially grateful for the way you have engaged with our scholars, taking up their questions and providing clear insights that has brought them greater understanding. And we feel definitely honored to have you with us once again. I'm sure this is the third session, and we are
Yeah.
actually honored to have you and guiding our scholars throughout this journey of software excellence. And a very big thanks to the SAP team and our FFE family, and definitely to all our scholars for happily engaging and interacting, and obviously making the session truly impactful. And thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Mr. Panneer Selvam again. Wishing you all a very warm good evening.